In this video, I'm going to go through the Springboks team that's been announced to play the All Blacks at Mount Smart Stadium on Saturday and give my analysis on whether I think this team is good enough to beat the All Blacks.
Some acrobatics from Martin Ori, and then from starting from Bonambi, and Ori! Make it a double!
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Mark Philpott Inside Sport. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. I'm going to be here through the whole Rugby Championship, the Rugby World Cup and all the other international games that are happening this year. So this is where you're going to get all your rugby analysis from a Kiwi who's living in Cancun, Mexico. Not too many rugby players here at this stage. Okay, so we're getting into this weekend's game, and the first thing I thought I'd do would be go through the Springboks team that was announced and have a look at each of the players and whether or not I think this is a team that's good enough to beat the All Blacks at home. So let's start off by looking at the forwards. And yes, in the forwards, we've got a very, very good front row, I think, in Kitsoff, Mamnambi and Malherbe. And I think this is going to be a great front row that goes up against whatever All Black combination goes out on the weekend. And I think these guys are going to do the South African forwards no harm whatsoever. So I see that as a really great tight three at the front, taking on whatever All Black combination comes up. Then in the second row, we have the likely locks, I guess, of Etzebeth and De Jager. And two great locks here, both fantastic around the ground, good at set pieces, winning the ball. Etzebeth's on another level, I think, and yeah, these two guys are really going to take it to the Kiwi pair, whoever they are, as well. Then looking at the loose forwards, we've got Smith in the number 6 jersey and Mostert in the number 7. Really, really good players. Again, quick at the breakdown, clearing the ball, but also strong and able to take the ball through breaks and get the ball prepared for their back line or for a strategic kicking option. So great combination in Mostert and Smith in the flanker positions. And then Weiss in the number 8 role. I think Dwayne Vermeulen played a great game last weekend against Australia, but he's going to be coming off the bench this week. Weiss is in the starting lineup, and you know, this guy is a rocket as well. So I can't really fault the South African run-on team for the forwards. I think it's a fantastic combination, and they're really going to put it to the All Blacks. So looking at the backs for the Springboks, I think based on last weekend's game against the Wallabies, I think the South African selectors have gone for probably the number 1 backline team that you would have expected. Faf de Klerk comes into the team in number 9, and of course his strategic kicking is important to this team, as well as his distribution abilities at fly half. Willem C, I really like this guy, lots of potential. He's a great running number 10 as well, and he can break any forward or backline open in the world of rugby today. Excited to see him play in New Zealand conditions as well, and see how that works out for him. Zealander comes in at 12 as expected. I think Esterhuizen had a great game last weekend, but Zealander is fantastic there. Again, big, powerful, able to make breaks, and that's what's going to be really, really important. We've got Arn in at number 13 in the centre. Had a little bit of a quieter game last week, although everybody else around him was playing so well. So I think he probably needs to step up a little bit for the South African backs this game and get his mojo back. He's an exciting player, he's a fast player, makes a lot of breaks for the Springboks backline, but I just think he's lacking a little bit of momentum at the moment, and it'll be good to see whether he gets that back against the All Blacks this weekend. On the wings, I guess it's the tried and proven Mampimpi on the left and Kobe on the right. Colby, fantastic of course, Cheslin Colby, and he can take on any backline and any defence in the world. So it's going to be good to see how those guys go up against the All Black backs. Willie LaRue had a pretty good game, I thought, against the Wallabies. Probably a 9 out of 10 for him. Had a couple of kicks that didn't go too well, but overall he slots into the back here, and he's tried and tested at the back for South Africa. So a very strong back line for the Springboks. and I think they're going to do very, very well against the All Blacks with this particular combination. So now I'm going to talk about the Springboks bench, and I think this is going to be the most critical part of the game this weekend against the All Blacks for the Springboks. What they bring off the bench is immense, powerful, and also fast and dynamic. So I think this is where the difference of this game is going to come. But first, before I talk a little bit more about that, let's go through who is actually on the bench for the Springboks this weekend. Okay, so on the bench they've got Malcolm Marx, and you can expect to see Marx come on probably after about 50 or 60 minutes into this game. Thomas du Toit, Vincent Coe, R.G. Snyman, Peter Steph du Toit, and Dwayne Van Meulen. So a fantastic options for the forwards there from all of those players. I think Vermeulen had a great time last week out against the Australians, played a really, really good game. Of course, Peter Steph du Toit got a try against the Wallabies, and I think the power that the Springboks bring off the bench, they're not going to lose anything when they bring these reserves on. And then in the backs we've got Grant Williams and Manny Lebok, and I'm really excited to see if Grant Williams gets a run out this weekend. Exciting player, heard a lot of stuff, good stuff about him playing in South Africa. Haven't seen him play yet, so going to be interesting to see him run out hopefully later in the game. And of course Manny Lebok had a great game against the Wallabies, I thought, last weekend. Deserves his slot on the bench, and with the Springboks having a plethora of number 10s at the moment, Lebok deserves his chance to come off the bench against the All Blacks. Played really, really well, both in the running, kicking and management of that game against the Wallabies. But as I was saying, I think this is where the game's going to be won for the Springboks in the weekend. I think their power off the bench. We saw the All Blacks falling off a little bit against Argentina when the All Black reserves came on last week. The continuity went out of their game a little bit. The passion, the running went out of the game a little bit. They got a little bit conservative, I thought. In addition to, of course, Argentina stepping it up in the second half, and that's always got to be taken into account when you're analysing that game last weekend in Mendoza. So, yeah, a fantastic team for the Springboks. Of course, some of these guys have already been in New Zealand for a week. Others will be travelling from the Wallabies game. And it was interesting to listen to the press conference of the South Africans yesterday and how they were talking about the jet lag issue is the same for the All Blacks as it is for that group of players coming from South Africa that played against the Wallabies. And also the difference between those that may be a bit fresh and already in the time zone of New Zealand versus those that are coming who played against the Wallabies, who are match fit and have already played an international game. So an interesting dynamic going on there this weekend. I think those players that did play in South Africa for the Springboks that are backing up against the Wallabies, they've had that game, they've had that international pressure, which you can't get on a training pitch, of course, versus those guys that have been in New Zealand for a week and a little bit fresher and dialed into the New Zealand time zone. So going to be really interesting as well. We've got the All Blacks, most of the All Blacks coming back from overseas and having to slot back into the New Zealand time zone. So as far as I'm concerned, we're not going to roll out any excuses for either team around that this weekend. It's pretty much a balanced situation for both teams. Let's just get on, enjoy the rugby, watch the rugby for what it is and what happens on Saturday in Mount Smart Stadium. So based on this team, I think the Springboks team can take it to the All Blacks. I think they will take it to the All Blacks. They're big, they're powerful. A lot of them are tried and tested from last weekend, and I think those that are coming into this team will just take it up another level. The only thing that might hold them back is that in that first 20 minutes or so, again, combinations, getting used to the play. They haven't had that game, some of those guys in the backs. So I think that's going to be something that we can just watch out for, see if it eventuates, or whether they hit the ground running and really take it to the All Blacks in that first 20 minutes. But I think this game's going to be won and lost in the last 20 minutes. And I think with the South Africans' power off the bench with this particular team, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in that last 20 minutes. So I'm going to do a video on the New Zealand selection when it comes out, and you'll be able to find that right here on my Inside Sport channel. So hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell notification, and you'll be notified as soon as that video drops. And don't forget, I'm going to be going through the whole World Cup this season as well as the Rugby Championship right here on this channel. So listen, really like to hear your views, particularly my friends in South Africa. What do you think of this team selection, both forwards and backs? Do you think they've got the balance right in this team? Do you think this team is big enough and strong enough to take it to the All Blacks? But do you also think it's a team that's set up for some open rugby? Or do you think we're going to see that strategic kicking game from the Springboks in New Zealand? Really interested to hear your point of view on this, so don't be shy to drop a particular comment in the list below. Okay, that's it for this video. I'll be back, as I said, with my review of the New Zealand team when that's announced, and you'll be able to find that right here. Until then, stay safe everyone and enjoy your rugby.
Some acrobatics from Martin Ori, and then from starting from Bonambi, and